want to welcome everybody to the Tuesday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. We're here with Men the Dude and, of course, Golan, who is surviving, God willing, a massive spider bite. Prayers with you, Golan. It's serious stuff. I've been bitten by a spider.
Well, I'll just say this is how much I care about all of you, because I won't show you on camera. This entire side of my body, red, swollen, and hard as a rock. So yes, I've been in and out of the emergency room all day today. I'm on antibiotics, and I'm still here for you.
And by the way, just so everybody knows, an emergency room in Barcelona is a tent.
And it's free.
I mean, just to refute that for a moment, the best healthcare I've received anywhere in the world, and I am a world traveler. Post-tsunami, I was treated in a literal tent in the middle of Thailand. This is a delight every day compared to what happened after Obamacare, but we don't have to get into that right now.
No, we definitely don't.
Were you there during the tsunami?
Hell yeah. I've got amazing photos and stories.
He's Forrest Gump of travel. Okay, let's get this started. And I want to get into something though very quickly. We've made a choice of how to do this show, and I respect the way we do it. We're not a clickbait show. We talk about topics that other people don't necessarily want to get into or dissect the way we do. And I like that. And I hope other people out there like that. The reason I'm bringing this up is yesterday we obviously spoke a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein, but that wasn't the major subject of the show. The reason we brought it up was how the messaging went down. A lot of people making a lot of money off talking about Jeffrey Epstein right now, and I just want to give them a little caution. For the better part of 35 years, places like the Weekly Standard, National Review, every conservative place made their living and killing off talking about the Clintons. That was their massive thing, was who did he kill, every single thing they could think of. And then donors just fed them and fed them and fed them until one day in 2016, Donald J. Trump annihilated Hillary Clinton in the election and ruined Bill Kristol and everybody else's career. In one fell swoop, he took them out, Golan. And I really think it's important when you do something to be honest. And I ask people this one question. As I say, it's the only people you could trust. It doesn't matter who it is, are people who listen to what you have to say. And to everybody that listens to Benny Johnson, to Alex Jones, to any of these different people, are they listening to you? Are they responding to your comments? Ask yourself that. Or are you just there for them to have an audience to spew? Go on, I go to you.
You know, I'm a professor. And I've been a professor since I was in the Army. So you're really talking about since around 1997. It's been a while. And one thing that I talk about as someone who is, as I like to say, a professional communicator, is there are people in the world who listen, and there are people in the world who wait to talk. And what I notice more and more is that the people who are in the world today, and part of that, sure, is all the stuff we've already talked about in the past, the social media, the echo chambers, all of that, is they are more and more people who wait to talk, which means they already have a prescribed narrative that they have in their head, and they are just waiting to spew at you. And no matter what you say, no matter what information you give them, no matter what talking point is brought up, no matter what evidence is present, they are going to say that thing anyway. Let me preface this by saying my mother gave me many years ago a piece of advice, and it was, know one subject better than anybody else on the planet, but know enough about every other subject that you can draw the conversation back around in a clever way to the subject you know best of all.
Brilliant advice.
Well, that's what people do. It's wonderful advice in social settings, in dating environments, if you want to make sure you always sound like you know what you're talking about. But it's not necessarily great advice if you want to learn something, because it means that all you're doing is waiting to figure out, how do I take whatever they're saying to me and add 3 sentences at the beginning that allow me to go back to the thing I wanted to say anyway. And so for many years, I lived my life that way until one day I realized I was learning 0 things. I was listening to 0 people. I was waiting to talk, and I changed my entire mentality. I still think it's a brilliant piece of advice. You just have to know how to apply it. And I think that right now we're in a space where people just want to tell you whatever conspiracy theory they already have in their head. They want to tell you whatever thing they read on social media. They want to tell you whatever clever thing, whatever quip, whatever phrase, whatever turn of word that they want to use on you. And it doesn't matter what you say to them at all. And so I think you're right. This is an epidemic. And amongst all the things that are making society worse, this is chief amongst them.
You know, Mend, I bring this up because today there was a brilliant cabinet meeting. It was really brilliant. I encourage everybody on YouTube to go and watch it. You got the best of Trump. It was like comedy for 30 minutes, talking about stealing Marco Rubio's clock and all of the great things that accomplishments. But there was two elephants in the room, and the one elephant in the room was the reporter who asked about Epstein, and Trump dismissed it, and Pam Bondi giving a very short answer. The problem is the very same voices that were screaming about this. This is really the problem, is you had Bongino and Patel, and even Bondi a little bit, talking about this so much, especially Dan Bongino. So I don't know how you kill this. I don't know how you kill this story. Maybe you just keep on going. But what do you say about that? Because I don't want to talk about this too long. It was just my thought.
Two things. One is it's not going to go away. So sweeping it under the rug, that was the worst job at trying to do that ever. It's like I've been saying over and over again, the most plausible explanation is probably the most likely. So the most likely explanation is that Epstein was a CIA agent. He was working for the CIA. They need whatever it is that he collected for them. Those files, those recordings, all the blackmail that he had is in fact CIA blackmail, and they can't give it up. And they should come out and just say that. They should just come out and say, look, that was a stain on the CIA's history. He was a pedophile and an agent, and we can't divulge the information. Nobody's going to accept anything less. And these lame excuses that they're giving, they realize that it's a 4-alarm fire. It's not going away. So let's see what happens.
I might disagree with you. By the way, I don't know. I disagree. Who the hell knows? That's the point, right? We're talking about a who the hell knows. So just get out in front of this damn story.
And how do you get out in front of it? You get out in front of it by admitting that he was
honest.
a CIA. Yeah. He was a CIA guy, and we need that data, and we can't divulge it to you guys. Sorry.
Whatever it is.
National secrets. Great. All right, moving on.
You're 100% correct. Whatever the thing is, release that thing.
And while they're at it, they should just admit that Hillary killed him too.
I'm glad we don't traffic in conspiracy theories on this show, because now we have a couple of doozies.
At least we're trying to traffic in how to get this damn thing out of the news cycle and try to move forward with this amazing agenda that Trump actually has. And last night, I don't know if either of you saw this, and it was just by accident, I turned on Fox News, and I never turn on Fox News at 4 p.m. because the Ingram angle is on, and I'm not really a huge fan. But it was the press conference before the meeting with Bibi and Trump, and it was very telling who wasn't at the meeting. And I found it interesting that Tulsi Gabbard wasn't there, and I found it interesting that J.D. Vance wasn't there. And Netanyahu met with J.D. today, but it was a masterclass in diplomacy. It was a masterclass in friendship. That should be the story of the day. What these two guys have done together and what their vision for the Middle East is insane, remarkable. Their vision is beyond.
It's funny because you use the word insane, and I hear this a lot. Oh, it's crazy, it's insane, it's off the rails. But actually, it's not. And I know you didn't mean it that way, but it's something that I actually hear from a lot of people who do feel that way. And what they're not realizing is just because it's not the status quo doesn't mean it's insane. Right? Just because we're not doing the same thing. Remember, you've all heard this. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
It's Einstein.
Well, that's what it's. You know what? That's another conspiracy theory. Who said it? Who didn't say it? I think it was Lincoln when he typed it into Facebook. But the point is that that's what we've been doing for decades and decades and decades. And not just about the Middle East, about a lot of things, but specifically about the Middle East. And the idea that every time we tell Israel, we're going to let you go to war, but we won't let you win the war, or we're going to go up against this enemy, we're not going to finish the job with this enemy. Like every time. Certain things, we're still falling into the trap of repetition. But there are so many things that are new and shocking, perhaps, because no one has ever said them out loud, even though many people have floated them in secret, whispered back rooms. Bibi, during this press conference, handed Trump a Nobel nomination at the podium. And I'll tell you, Live TV has never been this good. There's a reason why he's doing that. It's not just for show. He is doing that because Trump is thinking so outside the box of what has been done over and over and over again that maybe we're going to actually see a different result. And we already are. And yes, part of that is because of what Israel has done in terms of taking down Hezbollah, in terms of Syria going down, and Iran being weakened, and Hamas being dismantled, all of those things, all the proxies of Iran, essentially, all the tentacles of this particular octopus, the octopus that has been controlling this part of the world and the entire world as a result for a very long time, to finally do something about that after it's been the status quo, to just kind of close our eyes and turn away, or as men put it last week, what they did with North Korea. They had the opportunity to bomb, they didn't. Now they're a nuclear power. It's like, we could have done that over and over again. We've seen it happen, and now nobody wants to mess with North Korea. Well, guess what? Here we didn't do that. And I have to say, not only am I here for it, I love the fact that maybe this is the start. Maybe this is like in Mission Impossible. They light the fuse and it goes crazy. Maybe this is the start of presidents and the United States as a whole stopping to be so afraid to do new things in old situations.
You're right. That was very detailed and well said. On its most basic level, everything that all the international mediators and the people that mix themselves into the Israel, Gaza, Israel, whatever conflict, everything that they've tried has failed. Not only has it failed, it perpetuated this Arab narrative that somehow they're indigenous to the land when they are factually not. So these colonizers who came there are now claiming indigeneity to the land is ridiculous. Trump's just blowing it out. And you know what? A lot of the Arab nations don't believe that either. They know that that was just used as a tool by the Russians to get at the Americans through hurting the Israelis. So it was a little proxy war that started out between the Russians and the Americans. And now you're left with it years and years later. What is it, 75 years later, where it's the Israelis that are holding the bag and dealing with these suicidal, homicidal maniacs that just want to kill them. And they indoctrinate their kids to do that. So what do? What he did was outside the box. Listen, you start a war, you lose land, you risk losing land. So if they need to get out of Gaza, kick them out. Let them go somewhere else. Let them go back home to Jordan and to Egypt or to any other country. I am not advocating for them to come to the West, though, because we don't need more of that here. So they should be going to their moderate Arab countries and seeing how well and prosperous those countries that are not continuously waging war are doing. Iran could have been a wealthy country. It's an oil exporter. They could have been extremely wealthy. They're dirt poor because they've put everything into destroying Israel. And their people are suffering because of it. They send all of their money to Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis and all these other terrorist organizations when they could be taking care of their own people. So send them to a nation, send them to these moderate nations that where they could see that if you love your kids and you raise them, you want to procreate, you want to have families, you want to have that camaraderie, get-togethers, all that stuff. It's great. It's actually how you could live for this life, not for some promised life in the future with 72 versions. And can we bring that up? Like, what in the heck is going on with these 72 versions? Have nobody ever said that that is just insane and wrong? What are they teaching their kids?
If we start down the path of criticizing all the crazy shit that particular group is being taught in their actual United Nations run schools, we will be here all day, and it'll be the only thing any diplomat is able to talk about, because it is endless insanity. I don't think we should even go down that rabbit hole.
No, let's bring it full circle. I think there should be a new job for people like Benny Johnson and Alex Jones, is to delve, since they're so interested in people having sex with virgins like Jeffrey Epstein, delve into the Muslim thing. I think there's a tie between Epstein and the Muslim community. I see something there for them. I know you didn't watch it, but it was really brilliant. And it was a really brilliant cabinet meeting today. And other than that little elephant in the room, but it was quite impressive. It's really, as you've said, the adults are back in the room. Listening to Trump be able to handle the crowd, handle the cabinet, handle the media, spin it back and forth. And you say to yourself, there's nobody watching that doesn't say to themselves, wow, 6 months has really changed a lot of things. It was really impressive, man.
I can't believe it's been 6 months already. I mean, time is flying.
Not even. Not even.
I looked something up this morning when the next census is, because census determines how many representative seats each state gets. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I was talking about it with family last night. What does illegal immigration do for our voting system? And the census is how we designate how many Congress people each state gets. And California has an outsized amount of that because there's so many illegal aliens here that are counted in the census, and everybody gets representation, which I don't get. And they're probably going to try to fix that and make it based on citizenship. But right now, it's based on the population. And the next census count is in 2030. Trump has his last day in office is 2029, January, right? So if they could reduce the illegal population by a drastic amount, California and a lot of these sanctuary cities will lose, states, but cities, they'll lose representation in the House of Congress. And that's something that needs to be done. So that's another thing I think that
I agree. I think that's
going wide net. I mean, obviously, if sanctuary cities allowed ICE immigration officers to come into the jails and round up the criminals in the jails and then deport them straight from jail, they would not have these guys running around sanctuary cities, running through parks. Yesterday, they were in a park here in LA, just rounding up people. But since these cities are not cooperating, they're making it worse. And actually, more people are getting caught because of the Democrats. It's like everything else that I see them doing, where they claim that they're trying to help, but they actually make things worse for the people they're trying to help, allegedly. And this is a perfect example of it.
I think that's brilliantly said. But Golan, before I get to that issue, because I do want to get into the ICE issue, and I shared this with you before the show, because repetition is important sometimes. As I told you, I said to Ben Stein years ago, I feel like I'm writing the same thing over and over again. And he said, what do you think George Will's been doing for 50 years? So I want to remind everybody about how important that dinner was last night. You're talking about Trump forming a new alliance. And to all the isolationists that don't think we should be defending our biggest ally, you're talking about trillions of dollars of investments that are coming into America with this new alliance. You're talking about oil. You're talking about business. You're talking about infrastructure. The European Union is lost. The fact that Syria, Lebanon want to join the Abraham Accords is nothing short of a miracle, Golan. And because Trump has shown them that you could live and make money and your jewels not be 72 virgins, your jewels actually be jewels.
Very well put. Look, ultimately, we know this. The only thing the Middle East responds to is power. I know we talk about optics, and we know we talk about how sometimes how the optics are more important than reality. There is no better place to exemplify that than the Middle East. This is something that we've heard over and over again. Whenever Israel has had their chain pulled and been unable to do something or been unable to finish a job, the rest of the, especially Muslim or Arab countries, they notice. And when they notice that, it makes them feel like Israel is weak. But when Israel is kicking ass and taking names, when they are destroying nuclear facilities alongside America, when they are taking down enemies with pager attacks that seem like sci-fi stories, when they are in power and showing their enemies why the enemies are going to lose if you go up against the Jewish state, all of them sit up and take notice and suddenly want to be part of the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords are not about them loving Israel. They're not about them loving the Jews all of a sudden. They're not about them wanting peace all of a sudden. It's about them realizing that their lives are going to be better off if they say yes to Israel. And that has to do with the tech sector. That has to do with money. It has to do with peace. It has to do with anti-Iranian sentiment. All of that, yes. But it all comes down to the one kernel of power. And what last night's dinner did was to let everybody know where the power lies. It was a reminder that we have military, diplomatic, and political power. When I say we, I'm talking about the United States and by extension, our allies, specifically in that region. Of course, we're talking about Israel. You said something really smart, which is that dinner mattered. Oh, well, you often do. I just like to point it out occasionally. That dinner really mattered. Why? Because it was a private dinner in the Blue Room. This wasn't some show pony that everyone was supposed to sit there and gawk at. This was demonstrating serious diplomacy, not political theater, except it also let everyone know quietly exactly who has the biggest schlong in the room. and it matters more than ever before.
Well said, man. I want to go to you though. On this as we close up this subject. You constantly hear this thing, obviously the APAC crap from the Tucker crowd, and the reality is BB has an amazing grasp of English. The guy went to MIT and he was a commando, so Trump has an extreme amount of respect for BB. I mean, when you look at BB's life, I encourage people to do this. He's lived an outstanding, remarkable life, and he's an absolute hero, as Trump called him. Trump basically said that during the meal.
What happened here is really simple. There's really three or maybe four entities vying for power in the Middle East. There's Qatar and the Iranians, and they're on the same team. You have Turkey, they're on their own team. And then you have all the moderate Arabs, which is led by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, which is interesting that we're talking about Emirates, because one of the things that Golan forgot to mention just before was that there's another group that wants to join the Abraham Accords, which is...
He got bit by a spider, okay? Don't scold him.
The Emirate of Hebron. So Hebron, which is controlled by the Palestinian Authority, the biggest family or clan there wants to start their own emirate. What is an emirate? An emirate is a king. It's like the United Arab Emirates, UAE, which includes Dubai, which everybody knows Dubai. It's ruled by 7 kings. Each king has his own little kingdom, and they're all together. That's the United Arab Emirates. But they want to have their own emirate in Hebron, and this guy will lead it, and their clan is on board, and they're selling it to the clan because this is something that up until now, the Israelis were working with the Palestinian Authority to make sure that these clans don't have arms, they don't have guns, they don't have... So the Israelis were helping the Palestinian Authority, propping up the Palestinian Authority to this day for the past, since Oslo, what is that, 25 years ago, to make sure that these guys don't rise up against the Palestinian Authority. Now they're going to switch gears, and they're going to say, you know what? Forget the Palestinian Authority. That's been a total disaster. They pay to slay. They pay people to kill Israelis. You get a lifetime stipend if your family member kills somebody. And they're over it. They want peace. They want prosperity. So what we're seeing with the different groups is the Tucker group picked the wrong clan to go with. The Tucker group went with Qatar. Sure, Qatar has a lot of money, but who's on Qatar's team? It's Qatar and Iran. That's it. And that group is losing a lot of influence right now because Iran just got bombed and Qatar is being proven to be wrong. So they were wrong with Hamas. They backed Hamas. They're wrong on that point. They were wrong on Iran, and they're realizing it. They're going to realize it. It's going to come down that the moderate Arabs are making peace, and they're doing lots of investment with the United States. And then there's this other group that's going to be marginalized. I think Qatar will flip. I think Qatar will join the moderates, and then it's going to be one lone man out, which is Iran. And then the people there need to rise up and take back their country.
Well said. And I got to tell you, that was absolutely perfect and absolutely brilliant. I think you gave an amazing tutorial. Golan, to his point, I just want to wrap up this subject because the reason I think this is so important to bring up is because it takes away the trope talking points, which are bunk, which are known to be just absolute garbage. And the smut peddling done by Piers Morgan, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, all these smut peddlers are talking about this stuff. And what Men just said and what we're discussing is they've chosen life, right? These countries who used to choose death, so many of those Muslims that moved out of those countries that you're witnessing all across Europe, that's the death cult. What you're witnessing now is people that want to live. MBS, all these people want to live. And that's what Trump keeps on talking about. That's Trump's talking point, right? He hates death. He constantly talks about hating death, and he sees a region that wants to live. Embrace the living.
That rebuke of death is a perfect encapsulation of the anti kind of traditional Islamist mindset. If you think about what the PLO was saying, PLO, by the way, is the same thing as the Palestinian Authority. It was just rebranded. But the PLO, the terrorists who would hijack planes, who would kill babies, who would do all the stuff they're still doing today, frankly, now in Hamas. The thing that they would always say, and they still say today, is we love death more than you love life. And when mothers are interviewed from these groups, they constantly talk about how it doesn't matter if I send my son out to be part of the meat grinder, to be a martyr for our cause. That's the reason I have babies, because this life doesn't matter. There's an amazing video where a mother is in a waiting room of a hospital in Israel, a Palestinian mother, and her son is being operated on. Literally, that operation is saving his life, but the Israeli government is paying for it, has let them in to take care of it, and she's leaning against the wall with a look on her face of, I don't give a shit. And they're interviewing her and asking her, what's going on? They're like, my son, he's getting, life-saving surgery in the other room. And they're like, wait, why do you seem so sanguine? She says, because these Israelis don't get it. They think I care about that. It doesn't matter if he lives or dies in there. I'm going to send him in to be a martyr anyway. They don't understand that this life doesn't matter. This is truly what they believe. And so if you can flip that mentality into something like you said that is about living, you are truly negating one of the driving forces of the jihadi mentality and of the biggest obstacle, in my opinion, that exists in the Middle East, that you are going up against not just a genocidal death cult, but a genocidal death cult that loves the idea of dying for their cause, that doesn't fear death, that doesn't fear killing their own people, that doesn't fear putting, like Hamas does with every single person in Gaza, putting them all in harm's way. They want as many dead bodies, and especially small dead bodies, on the news as possible, because it makes them look good, it makes Israel look bad, and they are happy to murder every baby that they have and make more at a rate that nobody else is doing, because death is what they love. So if we can flip that narrative, and that's Trump's point, is we can, and little by little we're seeing that he's right, that is how we're going to change all of this.
Well said. And I want to move on, though, to what Mend was talking about before, which is ICE. And Mend, I got to tell you, I really feel like this philosophy, the Muslim philosophy of death we're talking about, has invaded at least 30% of Americans. And I really truly believe 30% of Americans don't care about life.
You're talking about the grievance Olympics. I mean, these kids who had too much privilege throughout life, and now they're trying to find a cause because they don't have any meaning in their lives. I don't think they don't care about life. They're just pawns in a vast control scheme where they demand compliance from everybody. And they think that that's entitled. They're entitled to that. What they really need is just a good swift kick to the head. You see that every
I don't
once in a
think
while.
so. I think, but I think we're past that point, man. When you see ICE agents being ambushed and 10 people arrested for wanting to kill ICE agents, and that's essentially coming from the power structure of the left, we've entered into a new zone of just they need a good spanking. This is something, 2 ambushes in 2
By a
days
good
against ICE
spanking, I mean,
agents.
you get 30 years in jail. That's a good wake up call. And the
Agreed.
only downside and the only problem that could arise is that another Biden gets into office and then they just pardon everybody and let them all out, which is an actual risk. So
Wait a
go
second.
ahead.
I want to change the language a little bit. Judah, I don't think it's that they don't care about life. I think it's that they don't care about their future. And I think that's a different thing. It's not that they want to die. In the jihadi cultures, they want to die. They beg for it. I would love to sit next to Allah in heaven, or whatever crazy shit they think. But no, here it is, I am willing to burn down my world and screw up my future and tank my economy and flood my border and defund my police and mutilate my own kids and all of that to further whatever I think is at the moment my progressive cause. And that is different than I don't care about life. It's that I don't care about the future. And it's a different kind of scary. But I want to reframe the way you're saying it, because I don't think any of those people are looking to die. But I think that
No.
many of
What
those
I'm
people
saying
who
is,
recognize that their future is in jeopardy, that they won't be hireable, that with all the, I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but with body mutilation being something my wife and I talk about all the time, we walk around, everybody's got some kind of crazy piercing. Everybody's got some kind of crazy tattoo. And I'm not judging anyone who has some stuff like that, but it's gotten to the point now where it's like virtue signaling. The crazier you look, the more insane you become, the more you split your tongue in half and make your hair a frizzy, weird color. All of these things.
where are you
It's
hanging
all
out?
hey, the world, man. That's the problem.
And by the way, I've told you about the tattoo thing. Mend is in the process of getting his 6 tattoos removed. So It's a little bit of a touchy subject for us here on the daily cheat sheet, and I appreciate both of your comments on that. But I really do want to get back to this thing, man, of watching Karen Bass in the park yesterday blocking ICE agents, thinking she's Rosa Parks, and I have no problem bringing up a reference like that in this situation. Like she's the Jackie Robinson of going after ICE agents when she's nothing but a felon right now. And I really wish Tom Homan would put his money where his mouth is and arrest her.
So she's a perfect example of what we're talking about. You have a loser who hates everything, doesn't have a cause. You know, when she was off in Ghana while Palisades fire was happening, when her fire department couldn't put out the fires, the reservoirs were empty, the hydrants weren't working. And they confronted her, she had nothing to say. She was like a deer in headlights, like a little demented moron with nothing to say, zero. And then someone said, oh, you could be the face, stand up to Trump and ICE agents. So now every day she's in a park trying to confront ICE agents that are deporting illegal aliens. A lot of them are violent criminals that should not have been allowed into this country. And a lot of them are also just simple, hardworking migrants from many different countries, a lot of them from Mexico, that are getting caught up in this dragnet. Now, the dragnet is happening, like I said before, because she won't let them into her jails to take out the actual criminals. So they have to run into the parks and catch these guys when they're on the street in between the citizenry, which is a lot more dangerous because these guys a lot of them are violent criminals and they do have guns and they do fight back. And now you have citizens in the crossfire. So she's like I said before, she's a perfect example of someone who was just a demented loser with nothing going on. And then they gave her a cause and now she's latching onto the cause as if she's the next Messiah. So let's see how that works out for her.
No, this is all just career rehab for letting LA burn. And I don't mean just by the fires. I mean everything in between, the needles on the streets, the homelessness, everything that she's done to that city. And let's not forget that she was a massive cheerleader for the anti-police movement for years. So for her to suddenly come out and go, this is illegal. I am going to stand up for what's right in terms of legal rights. And that, it's like, okay, we already know you don't do that. So this is just a PR stunt wrapped in a crisis, her pretending to be tough on crime and ICE is the criminals kind of moment. It is ludicrous and a failed PR attempt.
But here's the problem, Golan. You have people ambushing ICE people with guns. You have people shooting at ICE agents, and they're wondering why ICE agents cover their faces. This is the reason. Because they're doxxed, their families will be doxxed, and there has to be a point where there's a certain amount of responsibility. And I'm talking about prison, because remember when Maxine Waters said all those things, and you should lock them up, confront these people. At a certain point, these people that don't care about their future, as you said, however you want to phrase it, don't care. They're going to start. People forget they were at Kavanaugh's house, right, with a gun, if I'm not mistaken, right? There was that lunatic with the gun at Kavanaugh's house.
Yes.
This is what they're calling for, and this is what they stand for. So at a certain point, we have to shut these people down, and I don't care how that happens. Because this isn't free speech. This is no longer free speech.
It's the hypocrites that say silence is violence, and all those other phrases, election deniers and blah blah blah, and everybody's wrong. These are the same people that are now coming out. Joy Reid came out yesterday and said that Trump is going to rig the next election because he's not even worried about it. So who's the election denier now? Like, it's the same exact thing. You had people in Texas with this tragedy saying that there was a Democratic congresswoman who came out and said that these are the Trump voters, not just the doctor who you talked about yesterday, but there was an actual former congresswoman or a current congresswoman from Texas who said that, these are the election deniers, the Trump voters, and they climate change deniers, and they deserved it. But, that's what she was saying. I mean, these people are sick.
They're all inferring it. Stephanopoulos basically inferred it. This is not limited to just a handful of people.
Well, the rot runs deep, and it runs deep especially in legacy media. These people haven't learned a lesson. They're failing upwards, and that's how it works over there. Jen Psaki, went over to MSNBC, got a fat paycheck, and just continues spewing her nonsense. And I wish for more. I want to see a strong Democratic Party because we need that balance of power in this country. We're not seeing it. The Democratic Party is not empowering any of the true leaders within the party. The power right now is Mandami, AOC, and Bernie. Three of the biggest lunatics in the world have the biggest names in the Democratic Party. There are guys out there that are fantastic elected officials in the Democratic Party that get zero oxygen. They have no airtime. Nobody's giving them any empowerment. On the other side, you see when people come out against Trump's policies, like we just saw, where there was a giant faction of his MAGA base that was vehemently against going after Iran, he did it anyway because he's taking control. He's actually leading. He's not being pulled around. Nancy Pelosi is being pulled around by AOC. They're afraid. Chuck Schumer's afraid of AOC. Think about that. The guy who's been in Congress forever, or Senator Schumer forever, is afraid of a 26-year-old bartender who
doesn't. No, you're right. He's been there forever. You're right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he's been he was a House member for probably 30 some odd years, and then he's been a senator for 12. You're right. He's been there for about 40 years at this point.
And if the guy had any brains, what he would do is he would stick to his convictions and do what's right instead of trying instead of trying to chase the base, which is chase AOC, and he's just going to get driven out. There was another guy. Was it Engel? There was a guy in New York who was also
Richard Engel.
Was it Richard Engel who got kicked out by a progressive?
Yeah, I
got
believe
primaried
that was
by a progressive. Yeah. He wasn't woke enough. He was woke. He was lefty as it came, but he wasn't woke enough. So boom, he's out. The next crazy gets in. That's the Soros.
This, by the way, this is a tactic, right? This is not a bug. This is the feature. Yeah, this idea that Bernie Sanders, for instance, as you pointed out yesterday, went to Ireland and was being criticized as a Zionist for not being anti-Israel enough, or Corbyn not being anti-Israel enough, or what just happened with David Hogg when he was going into the DNC. And all the people, the Ken Martins and everybody else who said, who the hell is this leftist lunatic that's going to try and take over our organization? And then everybody got attacked. And then finally they all were like, no, turns out Hogg can handle his business. Let him go ahead and take over the thing. We saw how well that worked out. And then he was ushered right through the door. This is something that is part of, to tie everything together in a little bow, this is the jihadi strategy. And you see it right now. What Mamdani just did in New York, where he said, all these liberals, except for Palestine, I call them progressive except Palestine, they're PEPs. And it becomes this purity test that, like, now, if you want to call yourself progressive, you also have to be pro-jihadi. It's the same thing here. If you feel like you're progressive, you're on the left, and you don't support all of this crazy insanity, well, now you're not liberal enough for us. And the only ones that are the Hoggs and the AOCs and the Mamdanis and the Sanders. And if you don't match them, you are not really a liberal. And it's the same purity test over and over again. So this is not an accident.
It's coming from Soros. This is the Soros playbook. And what he does is he funds somebody that's just a little bit left of left, right? That guy gets in. The next round, he primaries him with someone who's more progressive, more left of that guy, until eventually you have David Hogg, AOC, Bernie Sanders, all these absolute lunatics, these people that have never signed the front of a check. Love that line. Never paid anybody, always getting checks. They've never actually had to run a business, never had to actually do anything real besides spew nonsense and get reelected. So that's the playbook.
I just want to say, interestingly enough, they asked Bibi last night, does he feel safe going to New York because he promised to arrest him? And Bibi's response was, that's just silly. And today at the press conference, Schumer, he called him a Palestinian. It was really classic. Then he brought up the John Lovett skit, the liar skit, and he started getting into the skit during this cabinet meeting. It was brilliant. And it was what America needs. Me personally, go on. I'm a big fan of it. And I think Trump knows how to diffuse this situation better than anybody. And it's marginalizing them. It's making them to be a joke that they are.
I think the thing you just said, where they said it's just silly, I think that should be the message over and over and over again. What did the kids say? Why are we talking about what they're saying at the kids' table? And can we get back to real issues and adult conversation? Why am I even entertaining that question? How many times Trump has done that, where he has said, that's a dishonest question, that's this, that's that. But I've never seen a better version of it than Quentin Tarantino at the Cannes Film Festival He was presenting Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And the question some idiot reporter asked him right after the premiere of the movie was, Margot Robbie, a very well respected actress, and this is ostensibly a movie about her character. And yet, did you think about the misogyny and only having her have a few lines of dialogue and mostly it being a visual of her body when she's dancing and her feet and this and that? Like trying to trap Tarantino in some misogyny question. And, the guy who made Kill Bill, the guy who has strong female characters on a regular basis, Jackie Brown, etc., he leaned into the mic and he said, "I reject the premise of your question." And then he moved on. And that's what we need to do over and over again. What are you talking about, you children? Sit down and be quiet. The adults are talking.
I want to move on to the last two things because this has to do directly with men, with something you just brought up, which Charlie Kirk, I think, started a rumor yesterday morning where he was reporting that he heard from the White House that they were going to give amnesty. So Trump had to clarify that. But at the same time, Mend, he also brought up that we need farm workers. And that's just a reality. We all know who we want deported. Let's stop kidding ourselves.
But hold on a second. There's a program that's been in place for, I don't know, I'm going to say 100 years, where based on need, you could get a permit to come into the States, and a lot of Mexican laborers do this. They get a permit, they're allowed to come here, they're allowed to work, they pay tax, they remit their remittance back home, and they work for the 6 months and then they go home. Or they, work for a month, go home for a week, work for a month, whatever it is, but they're allowed to come and go. Some of them come in on a daily basis and go back home and sleep at home at night in Mexico. So this idea that we need to allow people that we catch that have broken the law to stay here because for some reason we need farm workers, it's not rooted in reality. It might be rooted in the reality of today, but it's not rooted in the structure of how we make up our country and our workforce. We already have mechanisms in place that will allow the workforce needed to come in, either stay or go back home on a daily basis. So I agree that we shouldn't be running into farms. That's not where you're going to find the rapists and child murderers and the drug dealers and all the other people that we're trying to get. But if you happen to catch those people, you can't give them a pass. How are you going to figure that out? It's very convoluted. Either you have a standard where you say the law is the law and nobody's above it, or you don't. And then all, chaos breaks out. So I disagree with Charlie on that one. I think he's very bright. He's usually got it right. He has really good takes. I just
no. What I said was he said that Trump was going to call for amnesty, and he was wrong.
I have a take on this. And my take is not a popular take. I recognize it, but I'm going to stand by it. I think it's the right take, which is everybody wants cheap. Okay. That means cheap food, cheap toys, cheap labor, cheap groceries, but cheap comes at a price. And people have forgotten this because we're so used to fast fashion. We're so used to strawberries in January for $2 a bushel. We're so used to, grabbing 5 toys for the price of what used to be 1 toy at the store. But that means that, if you're getting $2 strawberries, they were probably picked by someone paid under the table, with no legal status, illegals, etc. If you want to go to the kid's birthday party and you want to just have mounds of toys, okay, congrats. They were probably made by some underage factory worker in China using plastic laced with God knows what that's going to interrupt our endocrine systems, and we all have plastic in our urine, right? So what I say is, I'm sorry, everybody who wants cheap, but it's time to put cheap aside because cheap costs lives. If you pay for ethics, you get ethics. You pay for dirt cheap, you're funding exploitation. You're going to get that. And I remember Trump saying something. People were like, "Whoa, it's political malpractice that he just said that." He said, "Maybe you don't need 10 toys. Maybe you just need 2, and it'll be the same price." Now he was talking about inflation, but I actually didn't hate that he said that because I think we are in a world now where we're placating the Chinese government because we want cheap manufacturing. We're placating, letting the border be open because we want cheap labor. All of these things, they have a cost in the long run. And I would much rather have food that is healthy, toys that are healthy. And I think that we need to get to a place where we stop letting everything be either crap or illegal because we all want to save a buck.
But after saying the piece that I just said, which is, round them up if whenever you catch them. I'm also cognizant of the fact that Trump is able to adjust on the fly as needed. And that actually makes me feel more comfortable with this whole thing, that he has the people there and they will know whether or not rounding up these farmers is actually going to affect our food supplies. And I know, based on everything he's done in the past with the tariff wars, with the Iranian bomb, and all of that stuff, he's willing to adjust on the fly as needed for the best of the country. So I'm not worried about it.
That was sort of my point in bringing it up to you, by the way. So you brought it full circle. I just want to end with this because Mend has brought up this point over and over again. And so have you, go on the way Trump does business and the way he does his foreign policy. So he announced today that he is going to arm the Ukraine. I'm sure that's going over great in Tucker circles and in all the other circles. But he said, Putin's full of shit. And he literally said that at a cabinet meeting, by the way. I encourage everybody to watch this cabinet meeting and the Bibi speech last night, because having him say Putin's full of shit. Oh, he also said the guy from New York is full of shit. So I figured we could say it on the show, man. But you were 100% correct. Went as far with it as he could, and now game over.
So here's what he did. He went to Putin and he said, listen, this guy's really smart. I get along great with him. And the left went nuts. Look how nicely he's talking to Putin. And look, he told Zelensky, shut up. You're not helping. And what he did was he tried to give Putin the biggest off-ramp to end this war. Stop the war. We'll lift sanctions. You'll make a lot of money. Your country will be wealthy. And meanwhile, Zelensky's quipping on the side. He's a war criminal. And he said, shut up. Not helping right now, which is what you do, right? When you're the adult in the room and one of the little children is trying to continue the fight and you're trying to end the fight, you say, you stop talking right now. I'm not talking to you. And he did that. And he went to Putin and he gave him a giant off-ramp and he gave him time. And now he's come to the conclusion, after trying that, he's come to the conclusion, Putin's not ready for it. He doesn't want to end this war. All right, now we're going to make it painful for him. Now we're going to give Ukraine some of those weapons, which is, it couldn't have been done better. You couldn't have handled this better, because he told the world, and Putin, heard it, we're going to stop sending weapons to Ukraine. We're going to make Ukraine have to make some hard, painful concessions here. And then he talked very highly of Putin. All of that is a setup for an off-ramp to end the war. If your goal is to end the war, that is a great way to do it. If your goal is not to end the war, you say what Biden says, that we'll fund this thing forever till the last man standing. And yes, there eventually would be one last Ukrainian, because the Russians have more people and they have a bigger war machine than Ukrainians do. So we may have been able to give them weapons, but eventually they were going to run out of men. And then the last man would be standing, and then Russia would get it anyway. So that was a failed strategy. That was going nowhere. It was a perpetual, endless war. What is it, 5,000 or 10,000 people a day die there?
7,500.
7,500 humans.
I'm going by Trump's numbers.
That's someone's dad, someone's kid, and it's on both sides. It's Ukrainians and Russians. It's tragic. It's horrific what's going on there. And he tried to end it. Putin didn't do it, and he didn't get played by Putin. Now he's saying, okay, I tried it that way, and the guy's full of shit, and now we're going to arm the Ukrainians, but here's the off-ramp whenever you're ready for it, Putin. So I think he played that really well.
Go on, final thoughts on this?
Look, the basic tenets of negotiation, part of that is flatter your opponent. Part of that is making sure that it doesn't seem like you're trying to take advantage of them. You're trying to give them the upper hand, or at least making them feel powerful as you slyly figure out how to weave in the things that you want from the negotiation. I still find it unbelievably cynical, even if I hated President Trump. The idea that I would listen to him say, she is brilliant, or Putin's a strong leader, or whatever about any of these dictators, and then think, he really meant that. He loves dictators. He thinks these guys are great. He's anti-American. He's a puppet. It's so obviously false. It's such an obvious lie when he is clearly baiting them and stroking egos, which is, FYI, all you people who are trying to pretend you're anti-war, it's cheaper than airstrikes to pay someone a compliment. And when he does all of that, and we see the results where either he gives them the velvet glove, and if they decide to take it, wonderful. And if they don't, it turns into an iron fist. That's called smart negotiating. There is no two ways around that. And you want to know how well it works? Just compare it momentarily to what Trump did now to what Biden did then. Okay? Trump has a far right flank, just like Biden had a far left flank. And the difference between a leader and a hostage is what we're looking at here. And I think that Trump stepping up and saying, I don't need your voice right now, I'm doing something else, while he listens to everybody around him, as we talked about, almost Lincoln-esque in his including of voices that are anti his initial idea, that is a true leader who is not afraid to do something that is unpopular and is not afraid to do something that might cause momentary discomfort. I say unbelievably well executed. You're securing the border, you're rebuilding the economy, you're holding China accountable, you're backing the cops, you're keeping America dominant. And God, I sound like a Trump sycophant, and I'm not one. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not one.
No,
but
that's
you got to
man.
give, yeah, but you got to give credit where credit is due. Period.
Can I just say, I just want to say this. That was absolutely a brilliant assessment. I'm not just saying that because you got a spider bite and you might die after the show. The correlation you just said between how Biden acquiesced to his left and Trump isn't allowing himself to be held hostage to the much smaller fringe of the right is absolutely brilliant point. It really is. And I want to thank you both for having your brilliant points and me doing all the work of watching 3 hours of press conferences and cabinet meetings. I think I might have watched it twice. It was that entertaining. I encourage everybody to watch it. There's a story where he stole Marco Rubio's grandfather clock out of his office. It's a priceless moment at a cabinet meeting. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the show. Go to Apple Podcasts, of course, go to Spotify, go to Substack. We got some good stuff cooking on Substack, Daily Cheat Sheet. Go to YouTube, Daily Cheat Sheet. Go to Instagram, Daily Cheat Sheet. Go to X, TD Cheat Sheet. And of course, True Social, Daily Cheat Sheet. And you can follow Judah Friedman there. You can follow Golan Ramraz. Mend hasn't made the jump over there yet, but hey, you never know. And on that note, I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world wherever you are, and God bless you all.